Hi YouTube! Today we're going to be watching a piece of lore that you have been asking me to watch for months, and I finally got to it because the second mini that I'm painting is an Ork Slasha Boy. We're doing it on stream and I'm going to finish it this Saturday, and then hopefully we can stitch together the video and post it on YouTube for you to see the process and results. I'm quite interested in Ork's lore. I've always been, but you know, the time has come. The time has come to watch it. From what I've heard about Ork's lore, the only thing that I heard from Bricky watching his videos, and also from like all the comments both on YouTube and a Twitch chat, that Ork lore is fascinating, is crazy, and you know, is totally worth checking out. Check out Luetin on YouTube, give him a sub, because I'm super grateful to Luetin for letting us use his videos on stream and on YouTube, react to them. He's a very good friend. And we begin. Shout out to Luetin again. The orcs are the pinnacle of creation. For them, the great struggle is won. They have evolved a society which knows no— oh my god, wait. Stop, I'm not— which knows no stress or angst. Who are we to judge them? We Eldar have failed, or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn, and why? Orcs are a superior race. The Inquisition is already coming for me, I know. Because we sought answers to question an orc wouldn't even bother to ask. We see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude. Othan the Preserve, Eldar philosopher. Damn, see? Eldar understand the orcs. I mean, at least this guy does. Okay, I'm excited. There they are. Yeah, wah.
Orcs are one of the most fearsome, savage, insidious, and most well-established races in the 41st millennium. They lack any empathy even toward their own race, and they exist as a genetically engineered creation of instinct and a DNA-coded sense of purpose. They are created for one task and one collective goal only: to wage unending war.
Wah.
The Orks are one of the older races in the 41st millennium, along with the Eldar, being created by the Old Ones. The then Krok would later become what are now known as the race of Orks. The Eldar were a higher form of design, with them possessing many levels of high intelligence. The Orks are their exact opposite, working on pure genetic instinct. Orcs and greenskins in general, though, are not born from sexual reproduction. They're rather grown from spores. And all orcs are grown from these same spores and fungus, be they lowly snotlings and Gretchen or full-blown orc warriors. Once a planet—
okay, how crazy is this? Like, who came up with orc lore? Come from mushrooms. So, in the shade of a rock, there's a surface mushrooms growing, right? Shade required for growth. And underneath, there's an orc embryo attached to them. Like, who made this lore? The person who made this lore was on shrooms themselves, probably. Like, it is kind of cute. Yeah, that's a cute little embryo orc. Yeah, baby orc. I wonder, like, what size are they? Okay, let's see how they're born from this. Do they just, like, emerge from the ground and they're like, hello world? It's crazy.
Becomes infected with orc fungus, either by chance or invasion. It'll likely never be free again, having to forever defend against the unrelenting green menace. This infection is often likened to something like a terminal disease. Once a world is contaminated, it will surely be a case of when, not if, it will eventually wither and die. Orcs are enemies to all throughout the galaxy, but despite their crude and instinctive-driven nature, they should never be underestimated. Defense to an orc assault can seem almost hopeless from the outset for some human worlds. With all their strength and power that they can wield, to fight the orcs is nothing other than a battle of attrition. A slow, grinding down of morale and willpower. For a successful defense against any assault from the Greenskins only buoys their spirits and emboldens them further to attack again with more fury and more enthusiasm. They won't.
I'm listening to this and I'm remembering Hell's Reach, right? That was a good example of how they fight.
Relent, they won't slow or surrender. There is no respite, there is no escape.
They're almost like Deathcore of Krieg that we watched the other day.
Orcs possess a powerful genetic sense of being to fight, to conquer, and to never surrender under any circumstances.
They're chads, they're giga chads.
Are usually unsurprisingly simple and unashamedly direct. To overwhelm the enemy with sheer weight of numbers or absolute weapon superiority, to never show their enemies mercy, to smash and obliterate all who oppose them under an unrelenting green tide of ultra-violence. They wage war with machines that defy logic and technical understanding, and they care little for strategic gain, are seen to be just as likely to slaughter one another as they are the enemy, but most especially if an enemy is in their sights. Orcs are often reported to, for example, skewer one another with swords and other melee weapons just so as to gain a killing blow to an opponent, crush their kin with their own vehicles with little, if any, regard, and use heavy weaponry without thought to such a thing as friendly casualties. Imperial forces are often left to wonder, how does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? And their answer is usually exterminatus.
True. There's no other way. They're crazy.
The orcs, as mentioned previously, are an engineered species. They were created some 60 million years ago by the Old Ones, who also created the Eldar and seeded life across the galaxy. The orcs were created, as were the Eldar, to wage war against the Necrons, the ancient enemy of the Old Ones. And the orcs would refer to their creators as the Brain Boys. Now, while the Eldar were made to be highly intelligent with extremely powerful psychic powers so as to best counter the Necron and Catan threat, the Orcs then, however, were the
physical
antithesis
strength
of the Eldar. Muscle-bound, irrationally aggressive, and rarely showing signs.
I love this artwork so much. Like, this guy looks so cool. I love this one.
Of advanced intelligence. They're driven by designed instinct. Orcs, you see, require war and brutality, as others might need food and water to sustain them. To an orc, war and brutal savagery is not a desire, it's a physical requirement to their identity. And this is why
they got needs, okay? The fact that they just like kill each other all the time is so funny.
Often fight amongst themselves as much as they would any outside race. While they do possess advanced tech, it is maintained by a class known as Odd Boys, who, as with all other orcs, are driven more by just a gut feeling, a born knowledge, than a true awareness of what they're actually doing. Unlike the Imperium of the 41st millennium, the Odd Boys possess the instinct of skill to not only maintain, but more importantly, to actually develop technology, if you can really call it such. This skill isn't learned or researched by a conventional sense of tech development. It's instead bound into their genetics. As with all things orc, most of their skills are instinctive. The best way to really envisage this is for them to just smash things together until by some miracle it just works. A kind of deadly galactic scrap heap challenge, if you will. Orcs don't possess any random evolutionary psychic powers as humans might, and say, evolutionary. If it's the old ones which have seeded life, perhaps it's by design, but nonetheless, the psychic power with orcs is comically random, and again, being by design from their creators, the old ones, this bizarre psychic power allows for orcs to literally will something to be true, that if just enough of them believe it, then it will be so. For example, the classic painting their war machines a certain colour may imbue it with a power, like being more powerful with explosives or just to go faster. Just because enough orcs will believe it to be so, with the proximity of numbers of them, means it will become a reality. This enables orcs to achieve things like space travel, even controlling space hulks and bringing them into real space under orc modified control. A terrifying thought. As well as bringing huge war machines to a battlefield. All of these things by all rational logic.
Why don't they wish to be smart? If they were smart, they would be freaking unstoppable. Only if they all wished for it, right? Or maybe if they wish to be smart, then they would stop manifesting. They won't be dumb anymore, and they won't be blindly believing everything because the rational brain would prevent them from it. Okay, no. Yeah, that's why it doesn't work. Yeah. No, never mind. Oh, because they already think they're smart. Okay.
Logic should be outside their realm of skill and possibility, and this genetic trait is also why orc technology, whilst essentially being just a random collection of things smashed together, will become devastatingly fearsome war machines in the hands of orcs, but then would just as easily return to being useless junk in the hands of other races. It's a clever solution to the threat of your war gear falling into the hands of an enemy. And again, this is by design of the old ones. Conversely though, if orc numbers dwindle, then it can be potentially counterproductive. Unlike other races who can wield immense power reliably, even in singular or small numbers, any number of examples would suit, from, say, Imperial Assassins to Grey Knights and Eldar Wraith Knights. The more or less of their own race will not have a bearing on their success.
This looks like a mini. Yeah, this is a mini. How the hell does it look so clean? What the hell? No, this cannot be a mini. No. How the hell did they paint it so that the paint didn't get in all of these little thingies? Masking an airbrush. Yeah, probably airbrushing. It's a giant mini. Okay, yeah, maybe if it's big, because look at the level of detail. Like, I refuse to believe that this is like this big. Okay. Makes sense now. Yeah, I love it.
On their success, their strength, or the functionality of their tech. Not so much with the orcs. The awareness of this orc psychic functionality came into general understanding through the Imperium of Man's tech priests, who, through their own cultivated belief in a machine spirit that inhabits technology, and that this machine spirit serves mankind at the command of the machine god. This imbued them with a perspective and point of reference that enabled them to see the truth of how orcs were able to bring technology to the fore that should have been far out of their reach. Lastly, the orc race's anatomy is particularly interesting. The old ones obviously wanted the orcs or Krork to be functional as a warrior race, a biological war machine. But before you have the ability to wage war, you still have to fulfill any life form's basic needs, like sustenance, food, water, the basics of life. The old ones in their wisdom imbued the orcs with a powerful genetic advantage here on top of their already many powerful genetic traits. For one, when it comes to food and liquid intake, the orcs can use their own growing fungus as a food source. They'll happily eat pretty much anything though when it comes to meat, and the lower
they eat their youth. Okay.
Orc forms of snotlings will cultivate this fungus food. The more interesting elements of their biology.
No, snotlings are literally babies. What the hell? Look at this orc anatomy. Is that a brain? I'm surprised they have one.
Though, is that orcs really are something like a symbiotic animal-fungus hybrid, making them partly eukaryotic in nature. Now, fungus was historically part of the plant kingdom, but fungi lack chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants that converts light energy to chemical energy. They also have other distinct structural and physiological features, and are so classed separately from plants.
Ooh.
Now, it has been suggested that orcs' green skin and their blood could directly contain chlorophyll, so as to allow orcs to actually photosynthesize.
Wait, they have
as
green
a plant
blood,
does, and thereby provide orcs with some energy so they can survive longer without actual food. Now, the only problem, this makes absolutely no sense for the reasons that I just mentioned. Fungi don't have chlorophyll. So if orcs grow and were cultivated as a plant-based life form, in part, this would actually be more reasonable. But they're not. They're grown from fungi. So apparently the generator Magos biologists of the Imperium should actually do some more microscopic comparisons before they reach their conclusion.
Okay.
However, it's also suggested that orcs in their blood and bodies may contain some sort of algae, and that this might be actually what's responsible for the coloration, and then also possibly the ability to photosynthesize to a degree. This is a more reasonable concept, but as with all alien races, information is pretty scarce, and speculation is abound. So this one point aside, other orc anatomical interests are that an orc's animal-fungal symbiosis means that they actually contain less critical organs than, say, a human, meaning orcs can afford to take wounds and damage that actually might kill a lesser creature, but it will allow them to continue functioning. Part of the reason they are so surely haphazard when in battle, almost careless, is their bodies are essentially designed to be simple, practical, and operate even when catastrophically damaged.
So how do you kill an orc? You have to cut off their head or something?
Which rings true of everything we know about their purpose and their design. They were designed to be a biological war machine and nothing more. Orc growth, though, is a strange thing, whereby orcs will grow according to, I suppose, unsurprisingly, how violent they are.
Yeah, like the more they kill, the bigger they grow.
At varying rates dependent on how successful they are in combat, be that versus other orcs or their enemies, and then their growth will stagnate again.
Culture. Orc culture. Is
Orcs
there
live
such a
across
thing?
a wide and scattered number of worlds throughout the galaxy. Some in a state of war, some in endless skirmishes, and some dominating worlds, ruling them as overlords, with often human slaves obeying their brutal command. The Orcs expansion was really an accident, as best known in Orc history. Of course it was. This is why even now their settlements are often random with no real pattern, focus, or direction. The Eldar claim orcs have become part of reality itself. Mankind as well scouted, probed the galaxy, all of the known galaxy, and everywhere that they explored, they found the orc. The galaxy at this point is contaminated beyond any hopes of cleansing and salvaging it from the orc. Because of the random and haphazard fashion by which orcs discover, explore, and inhabit the galaxy, they have splintered into various communities, if you want to call them that. These communities are usually just a confederacy of tribes, either loosely or under a war.
It's an orc pirate, what the hell? What is this clan? Is there a clan of orc pirates? This is cool AF. I love this artwork. The freebooters.
Warlord. Each tribe is a random bunch of orcs just smashed together with clans and various mechs and materials. It's a mishmash of violence and constructivity. It's best not to overthink it. It bears no resemblance to any ordered sense of a community.
Not gonna overthink it, just gonna accept it.
Orcs have known of mankind and their emperor for some time. They know that humans worship the Emperor and have seen his shrines and symbols across human society. They regard the Emperor as the god of the humans. And this is easy for orcs to understand as they have their own gods. Even though they see humans as weak, they do respect the Emperor as a powerful war god. From the orc point of view, the Emperor is a constant warlord to the humans. They see him everywhere in human society, and so do the orcs. This widespread war god must surely be powerful, and
that's why they respect him.
Some orcs speak of a legend where the Emperor would appear as a manifestation challenging the orc gods to battle, but still, despite this, he's also seen to the orcs as a confusing figure. Why he would command his human servants to take on so many pointless tasks when they could be just fighting makes no sense to the orcs. The humans' constant
Yeah,
failures or their
politics.
stress and despair seems to underline this confusion for orcs, hence why they often use the word "ooman" as a slang for things that are pointless, impractical, or just counterproductive.
Human.
The orcs' attitude to life is fairly simple, and therefore they cope with the realities of the universe far better than many other races.
Oh, they're
With no
scary.
overarching goals and day-to-day concerns being really only whether to build or fight or eat, it's quite a stress-free life. Especially when you have no fear of your own mortality, from an orc's point of view. Generally speaking, they don't try to influence their own destiny, they don't
Space
try to
Marine
apportion blame,
screenshots.
unless it's some stupid Gretchen looking to get his head bashed in. Their hatred is spread equal among their enemies and their allies, and if they fail, they feel no guilt, try again in a different way. Unlike humanity, chaos has little to any fear or effect with orcs. Their minds are hardwired to their simple day-to-day activities, so dreams of power and turning against each other for some cause, it's not something that's likely to spread very insidiously through a tribe of orcs. They're probably too busy already killing each other over some far more trivial matter. And because of their simple and objectively speaking stress-free lifestyle, it leaves little psychic stress by which chaos can actually invade them.
What could be the reason for orcs to kill each other? Just for fun, I guess? Or randomly on accident? No, not on accident. To, I don't know, duel? To see who's stronger or something? Like, if they have such a carefree life, why would they even bother to go against each other? I guess it's just for fun. They like fighting. Okay. Why not? Yeah, why not kill each other? Good question.
Also, even though some races may look upon the orcs as evil, either due to their near mindless savagery
they're
or their
not.
endless conquest of worlds, this is actually a pretty ignorant perspective. Lumping orcs in alongside dark forces like Chaos or Dark Elder is really a disservice to the orcs, because they exist by design. And they have become
I'm sorry, but like, I'm comparing orcs to like wild animals or something, you know? They're led by instincts, by design, by nature. Like, they're not evil or good. They're just orcs. Like, you can't say that like a tiger, you know, because like they're a dangerous animal, they're evil. No, they're not evil. They're just the way they are. They just want to survive. They want to be they want to feed their children. They don't want to starve, and that's all they want. They're just chilling. The way that we see things, of course, they're bad for us because they're destroying our shit. Same as Tyranids. I'm still not convinced that Tyranids are evil. I feel like Tyranids are kind of the same, even though they have a hive mind that tells them what to do. But this hive mind is also caring about survival, and that's it. Survive, conquer, eat everything. We're hungry. People are gonna call me a heretic.
very effective at existing. They follow their instincts, and these are hard-coded into their very being. Evil? I don't think so. But brutally savage? Definitely. It's also often mistaken that perhaps if one were to see Chaos and Orc fighting on the same battlefield, that they are somehow an alliance. In reality, it's probably more simply that the Orcs just see them as other fighters on the field, who they'll probably turn to deal with in short order once the nearer enemy to them has been battered into submission. And when it comes to trade, Orcs strangely do have this as part of their culture, and they use their teeth. Literally their teeth. It's actually a comically natural solution to economic inflation, because orcs go through their teeth similarly to something like a shark. They replace and regrow them frequently. Orc teeth also degrade over time, so it's impossible to stockpile them. This keeps prices in orc trading constant and ensures that all orcs have access to regular currency and commodities. And besides, if you're running short on teeth, it's no problem. You can just go smash some other orc's face in and get yourself some more.
There you go. I was just asking, what reasons would they have to kill each other? There we go. Orconomy is one of those reasons. What would an orc want to buy? A bigger axe? A louder gun? Okay. This is crazy.
Orc language is deemed as being low Gothic, and orcs are able to communicate with others, but at a very basic level. Orc script, though, is very different altogether, and it's actually written in glyphs. The core of this is simple.
I'm sorry, Luetin. Hmm. Baron, renegade, outcast, bog, brown, drag, destroy, rip, cut, break up, take apart, drag something, fang, oh, like a thing, mutant. Oh, that is so cute. Git, enemy, troublemaker, nuisance, grim, ruthless, prowess, face, dangerous, grim, bad, evil, bad, wicked. Okay, bad, bonk. And Bud Duel. Look at this. Duff, vanquish, beat, flash, banner, badge, gob, mouth, eat, drink, speak, out of turn. Like everything that's done with the mouth is gob. Grod. Best to, oh, I can see. Bark, voice, boss, leader, fortress, fung, drop food, like fungus, golf, spiky, warlike, grot, Gretchen, servants. Oh, so those are the grots. Okay, I still don't know what grots are. I thought first that grots are like baby orcs that grow into big orcs with time, but I think it's just like a different it's a different species. Bug-eye, Bug-eye, Tyranids, Duruk, Force Field, Garg, huge, big, terrifying, noisy, powerful, Garg, Gog, God, Gog, Grub, cunning. Okay, like this is cute. This is so cute.
Clan indicators,
There
and
are
these
so
are then
many.
adapted using phonetic symbols which can form some of the key orc words. It's pretty simple though, because it's just generally not needed by the orc race. They function by design,
helmet.
not structure or organization. They have no need to keep records, log data, or any other useful
Damn, I need to
societal
find
function
this
for writing
orc
and literature. These aren't
dictionary.
important for orcs.
Nerd,
The
unlucky.
orc way is one of near anarchy. They're ruled by traditions and understandings much more than laws and governing. And it's pretty simple. Orc society is about conflict. Strong orcs will rise up, weak ones will work or are killed, and they in turn benefit from the leadership of the stronger orcs. If an orc tribe is beaten by a stronger one, the survivors gain the leadership of a better tribe, making them stronger. And there's no rules about a tribe's size, location, or purpose. It's just the rough grouping of orcs in a given area at a given time. And each is led by a warlord whose authority is pretty loose, giving just maybe enough rule to prevent all the orcs from turning on each other. A tribe could be a few hundred strong, a few million. The literal numbers are not important. Large tribes are usually split into smaller groups of warbands which are ruled by war bosses. And these warbands are usually a few hundred strong, creating smaller forces ready to battle wherever it's necessary, or whenever they feel like it. While orcs will belong to a tribe, they also will belong to a clan. Now, a tribe may break apart into parts or
clans
form
are
new
bigger.
ones, but clans are enduring and remain a reasonable constant from an orc point of view. Some of the most noted orc clans are as follows. Now, the Bad Moons, these are some of the most wealthy orcs. They're essentially what could be regarded as the merchant caste in orc society. The Blood Axes were the first orc clan to encounter the Imperium of Man, and they adopted human tactics of camouflage, albeit slightly bright camouflage. And usually for orcs, they'll sometimes actually retreat, having picked
Very
this up also
flashy
from
camouflage.
humans, but they'll usually return, and in greater numbers. This clan will
Camouflage. What happens when an orc dies? Do they just like release spores and infect everything around them, or they just I wonder, maybe they don't care about dying that much because they're gonna be reborn anyway, because, you know, fungus and all of that. Just by sweating there's more spores. Oh damn, okay. See, I know orc biology. I'm smart. I'm an orc scientist almost. You know, if orcs met me, they would probably think that I'm pretty smart, so I would be their queen. No, I don't think so, because I'm not very strong, and they only respect they don't respect smart. They respect strong.
sometimes even trade with humans, even having been known to work as mercenaries for them, which sounds crazy, but may be uncomfortably necessary. The Death Skulls are essentially looters and scavengers. They appropriate
Death
battlefield
Skulls.
loot to make themselves stronger,
Oh, they're blue.
including Imperial war gear. The evil sons are orcs who are committed to speed, and whatever makes them go fast should be as loud as possible. They also love flying vehicles like fighters, fighter bombers, and they usually seem to wear at least some red material, because as all orcs do know, red ones go faster. Goths. The Goths are simply tough orcs. They're the biggest, the most brutal. They thrive on battle more so than others, and they're driven by the blood fury of close quarter battle. Snakebites worship ancient traditions over advanced tech. They protect themselves with war paint and may even choose to remain as feral orcs instead of developing their skills with mechs and guns. Finally, the freebooters. These are the pirates. These orcs are notorious thieves, preying upon anything or anyone that they find. They'll kill anybody they see. They'll seize upon, haul their booty back to their hidden bases.
Oh my god, I love these guys.
Now we go to orc religion. Whether intentional or not, the old ones ended up imbuing the orc with a religious sensibility. They worship their two gods, Gork and Mork. One is brutal and cunning, and the other is cunning and brutal. The orc gods are the center of orc energy. They drive and power their whole culture. The best idea we have of how the orcs perceive their gods is in their mechs. These are the physical manifestation of their orc gods and drive their followers into stupefying frenzies of violence and bloodlust. They're also seen in armoured battle suits Gorkanaut and Morkanaut. These armoured suits are seen as idols, and the orcs piloting these suits gripped with visions of their gods, urging them to fight on harder, faster, more brutally, and inevitably to meet their demise on the battlefield. While orcs often talk of Gork and Mork as separate entities, it's even possible they are one, perhaps with two sides, or provide different visions to different orcs. Still, it doesn't stop the orcs from often favouring one or the other, being known as either Gorkers or Morkers. One figure in the Imperium knows more of Gork and Mork than most others. He is Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders. He is what's known as a perpetual in the 40k universe. Essentially, he's an immortal. He can regenerate from almost any injury, even something like being vaporized. Vulcan disappeared after the Horus Heresy, but he would appear some 1500 years later on the Imperial world of Caldera to aid in defending it against a massive orc invasion. Now, though he died many times over, he would regenerate and appear again on the front lines.
Oh my god, I really need to watch some lore videos on each single Primarch. I'm missing out not doing it. We're gonna do that. We're gonna start with the Sanguinius soon TM.
The Imperial Inquisition requested he lead a mission to destroy the orc war boss known as the Beast, but Vulcan refused until Caldera was saved. With the aid of Imperial forces, Vulcan saved Caldera from destruction and would return to Terra, gathering an Imperial force to Ulanor, to the homeworld of the Beast.
Illinois.
Vulcan would lead the final charge into the Beast's massive temple Gargant, confronting the war boss there. During a powerful struggle, the Primarch and the war boss would fall into the Gargant's power generator, and Vulcan created a detonation in the generator so powerful it killed not only the Beast but a massive chain reaction, shattering the temple Gargant and obliterating them. Vulcan presumed dead by the Imperium, but the Salamander Space Marines still hunt for him, believing him indestructible and that he will return to them. And the point of this story was what Vulcan would witness in the heart of the Orc Gargant when exposed to its powerful generator. He witnessed the raw energy that was the culmination of all the Orcs' warg, and he would witness the origins of the Orcs and their gods Gork and Mork battling one another at the beginning of time. This powerful vision allowed Vulcan to understand the true nature of the orcs, how they are a race of evolution through experimental anarchy.
I'm the hand of Gork and Mork. They sent me to rouse up the boys to crush and kill, cause the boys forgot what they're here for. I was one of the boys till the gods smashed me in the head, and I remembered that orcs is meant to conquer and make morgue boys of everything they don't kill. famous Orkish philosopher.
Now, the Orks have been an ever-existing threat to the Imperium of Man, but towards the end of the 41st millennium, there's been seen an explosion in Ork Warg. Now, the Ork Dominion, or Empire, marks the regions in the galaxy currently controlled by the Xenos. Some planets are now completely controlled by the Ork race, where others are in an unending state of brutal, nightmarish, and near-hopeless war. Orks have been heard to keep under control some of the local populace, creating a prison workforce who are kept in unbearable, exhausting and dangerous conditions, abiding by their uncaring savage slave masters. Most of these prisoners will be unlikely to ever know any other life than being subject now to the Orks' brutal will. But the Orks will at any time also control random isolated worlds, as well as rampaging hordes that sweep through the galaxy, battling all that they encounter. They also have been found inhabiting ancient space hulks. Now, as an aside, a space hulk is simply a term given by the Imperium of Man to any ancient wrecks of space vessels. These hulks are no mere freighters or even warships, but giant ancient...
There's a game called Space Hulk, and I was like, you know, everybody's like, you should check out Space Hulk. And, you know, I'm always picturing a Hulk, like, you know, the orc-looking fella. I was like, and I thought it was a creature. I thought Space Hulk was like somebody. And this is what it is. All right, now I see what the Space Hulk is.
Vessels, possibly from the early exploration of mankind, or even lost in the Age of Strife. They can be so massive as to even maintain their own gravity, or in rare cases, atmosphere. The hulks can often appear and disappear, transitioning between the warp and normal space. This makes exploring them extremely dangerous.
That's cool,
As well as orcs, they often can host other dangers like the vile Xenos Tyranids, who have been found often using these hulks as breeding grounds for their gene stealers. Even Chaos Space Marines can sometimes be found there, either searching for ancient tech or preparing to launch hidden attacks against the Imperium. While there is great potential reward in searching a Space Hulk, there is also immense danger, coupled with the ambient danger of the own Hulk's instability. As such, searching these vessels is left to the elite warriors of the Imperium and the Space Marines, the Space Marine Terminators. They're some of the most heavily armoured units within a Space Marine chapter, and their ancient Terminator armour enables them to carry out the extremely dangerous task of searching the Hulks. Now, humans have explored extensively in the 41st millennium, and they have found orcs to inhabit every corner of the galaxy, and this seems unlikely to change now or in the future. The orcs are not a race of reason or diplomacy, or even needs. They exist as a genetically engineered creation of instinct and a DNA-coded sense of being. They spread across the galaxy more like a plague than conquerors. This plague of war is often referred to as the Warg. Orc conflicts usually will remain localized to their own planets, or objectively speaking, small raids to worlds inhabited by other races, or other orc or pirate-like raids on passing ships. Again, as with most things that orcs do, there's usually not a grand plan here, so don't overthink it. A Warg, though, is a different happening altogether. When numbers of orcs reach a critical mass, they feel a need to migrate to form a crusade of apocalyptic aggression that will sweep through a region, destroying anything in its path. Numbers of orcs are beyond estimation, then they'll swarm through a segmentum of space, exterminating everything in their path. You could liken this to a locust plague or a viral pandemic, until it eventually burns itself out. A Warg also refers to a psychic field that affects Orc psyche. This is, again, as with all things Orc, an instinctive state, enabling them to make simple observations of understanding. This applies to everything from designation of seniority, which again, don't overthink that, it's usually more akin to who is just bigger and therefore more right. All orcs generate this dull psychic field by default. It binds them together and helps their ramshackle culture function. The more orcs that are present, the stronger this shared psychic field becomes, and this is amplified through sheer numbers, or if they say are enjoying a really good bit of battle and smashing their enemies' faces in. The warg helps drive them, and you could think of it as being akin to momentum, where past a point it's just going to increase. A warg can begin on a small scale. Sometimes there's a small individual who may have some vision of great carnage and feel inspired to share with others by smashing their heads in until they get it. Or if he's imbued with a sense of tech skill, maybe he's going to create some giant gargant war machine that gets the blood and hype of his fellow orcs running high. The rumours of war and coming carnage spread like wildfire to the orcs, only exacerbating this sense of warg. An orc war boss, who is simply a big powerful orc in command of his tribe, will usually rise to their aspired position through just basically beating the hell out of all around them, until fellow orcs just get it that he's the biggest and the strongest. His decisions will be enforced by a ruling caste of orcs known as knobs, and these are again a bigger than normal orc, who will surely remind those below them of the fact at every opportunity.
I mean, I guess that also, you know, with size comes experience and, you know, wisdom, if you can call it that, right? A big orc can't be just a dumb piece of meat, right? Because he managed to survive for so long.
With some casual violence. A war boss in a time of warg will assert himself through unsurprisingly more savage, senseless violence towards his fellow orcs. When a war boss has created enough blunt trauma to be recognised as a powerful boss, he'll then be deemed an orc warlord. As his status spreads, more and more clans will come under his control, growing an unrelenting green mass of aggression. The mechs and brain boys will build ever more outlandish creations, absurd in their brutality and genius in their creativity. Vicious war machines belching smoke and oil, poisonous vapours, acrid smoke, mobile fortresses, titanic war engines created from basically random scrap metal and abandoned, twisted, now cannibalized war engines. As the war boss grows ever stronger toward becoming the warlord, he will subsume his challengers' armies, with many of the orcs now seeking the sense of warg with a bloodthirsty insanity. Mech boys raise towers of warg, and gargants will start to be seen. Gargants are the equivalent of imperial titans, and so represent a
I'm getting a headache from all of this
firepower.
Too much warg.
These gargants are idols, or seen as avatars to the orc race, as manifestations of their gods Gork and Mork.
Gork and Mork.
They are merciless weapon assemblies of sheer destruction. Gargants form no standard pattern of design, as does barely anything in the orc way of creation. They are instead a random collection of parts and combinations of cannibalized war machines. And this excitable and chaotic nature of these builds makes their weapon systems unreliable. Their whole design is haphazard and probably about as dangerous to the crew as to their targets on their battlefield. A clear difference between most orc war machinery and other races in the galaxy is they don't utilize guidance systems commonly. They also carry large crews of orc and the lower, smaller race of Gretchen. And they operate these war machines as a team, passing down orders as you might imagine a steamship of, say, the 19th century.
Imagine an orc
calling
mechanic.
down orders to the engine room and so on. Gretchens are significantly physically smaller than orcs, and so they're used to repair systems on the go by crawling into tight spaces.
Yeah, because they fit
Gargants
through.
are usually weaker in terms of armor compared to Imperial Titans, and relatively shorter range of weaponry. However, they're still difficult to destroy because of the compacted, dense nature of their construction. There is one rarer variety above a normal Gargant, known aptly as a Mega Gargant.
This is so cute, and they all have faces. Have you noticed? They all have like facial features. That is adorable.
And this is essentially a mobile fortress running on tracks. Imperial tales tell of orcs laying siege to cities, spending even as long as 18 months to construct these colossal machines of war. Returning to the apocalyptic warg, the continuous swelling of orc mobs starts to reach a critical mass.
Oh damn, that's a big squig. What the hell? Squig as big as an orc. I guess squigs come in different shapes and sizes too. I mean, compared to this guy, this squig is normal sized. So squigs are probably also fungus, and they work the same way as orcs do. If this is an aggressive squig and it eats other squigs and smaller orcs and grows bigger, it's Squigs are kind of cute too.
And transport vessels are smashed together, and the Ork armies reach a
I
point
think they
of
have
no
a tail
return.
too.
This wave of violence now comes crashing down as the Ork armies overflow with bloodlust, descending into battles that consume entire worlds. The Gargant idols further trigger the instinctive drives of the Ork clans and tribes who will do anything to outdo each other's destructive capabilities. At some point, this wave of fury and raging violence reaches its boiling point, and the Orks begin to gather their great Warg army. The ground shaking under the weight of tracked vehicles and striding walkers.
Oh, this is
The
a model
skies turn
too.
black from
Looks like a
flyers,
model.
belching out blackened exhausts,
I mean,
and their
mini.
ragged banners of brutality raising high atop these rusting, illogical contraptions of war. Ork wargs are very decentralized and have very little true coherency, even with a powerful war boss or warlord overseeing things. Various fragmented factions will exist in a warg, cults of speed for example, whose principle is to go fast. Essentially speed freaks who love the thunderous roar of an engine, and if they can shoot some guns at the same time, all the better. Probably driving over and crushing some of their own kind in the process. Storm Boys are elite shock troops who strap huge rockets on their back to make sure they're first into battle, charging with no thought much to the consequences. And this is actually frowned upon by many Orks as they prefer to charge in under their own feet to get physically into the battle. Still,
Flying
seeing Storm
Ork.
Boy's volatile rocket pack malfunction go spinning off into an exploding disaster, certainly killing the pilot in the process, is great entertainment for the comrades on the ground. And then of course you've got the Mad Boys. These are Orks overwhelmed by the psychic energy of Warg.
It's
And they also can
amazing.
occur when clans of Orks inhabit a planet and have to develop their own technology over generations of spawned Orks. Either way, Mad Boys don't coexist well with their kin. They're essentially best described as feral, which is saying something by Ork
they're
standards.
wild.
These feral, crazed Orks are also known as nutters, and they're grouped together into squads who will either be a
Nutters.
secret tool to success when unleashed on the enemy, or a hindrance when they accidentally slaughter any fellow
Each
Orks
other.
they happen upon. Once combat begins, Mad Boys can still be some of the most savage fighters to an Ork foe, or fellow Ork alike, ripping them to pieces. Still, they're just as likely to sit in a whimpering huddle, unable to move, overwhelmed by psychic confusion. No Ork can tell exactly how they're going to behave, and making them an unpredictable and extremely dangerous force to bring onto the battlefield. Along with their crudely smashed together spaceships and space hulk infestations, Orks have even been reported to convert asteroids into massive space fortresses known as the uncreatively titled ORKS. The Ork species is one of the most adept at making the best of their surrounding materials, and this is the genius and danger of their design. The old ones created the Orks with only two things in mind: making them deadly and to make them near impossible to exterminate. Orks are a plague upon the galaxy to be sure, but not because of their skill in battle or because they spread insidious ideologies, but simply because they're so difficult to truly eradicate.
Get rid of.
Humanity, for all of its technology and experience, often must resort to planetary exterminatus to be truly sure of destroying an Ork infestation.
It's like a pest control. The exterminatus at this point. Like, it's too difficult to take them out one by one. Just nuke the planet because there's no other way. You can't nuke all the planets though. If the Ork disease or infestation is spread everywhere, you guys are fucked. You're doomed. You'll be fighting Orks your whole life.
Orks defeat their enemies by either overwhelming them or wearing them down to a point of collapse through continuous losses in personnel and materials, simply by attrition. Orks operate from a sheer antithesis of ordinary warfare. Usually any
Sorry, the
force will seek
subtitles.
out decisive victories, utilising minimal resources and seeking to limit casualties. Orks, on the other hand, seek no limitation in casualties or resource management. They have no
They don't
control
care.
over this, but to burn as hard and as fast as possible. And even when defeated, they will return to grind down whatever crumbling defences remain of their enemy.
The Warlord. Ooh, interesting.
Now, there are many individual stories and tales of Ork warlords and bosses, as there are within the Imperium and its various leaders,
that
captains,
Yarrick?
and general history. In Ork culture and history, you can't speak of the Orks without mentioning the warlord, Gaskell Mag Ork Thraka. He's an Ork warlord of the
Gaskell
Goth
motherfucker.
clan and is an immense symbol of everything Ork. Now, despite Orks being generally an anonymous mass of anarchy, he stands out as a powerful leader. He's commanded multiple campaigns and crushed most, if not all, in his sights, be they Imperial, Eldar, or Chaos, smashed the metal skulls of the Necron into brittle scrap. He has influence above that of any ordinary Ork warlord and is often described as a prophet of their gods. He travels the galaxy subjugating, slaughtering, and burning the enemies of the Ork. His vision is to wage a warg so immense as to summon the Ork gods out of the immaterium and into the physical realm, and he extends their will. But his beginnings were nothing of note, just another Ork bashing in other Orks' brains to climb up the ranks, and originating on a planet known as Ork, originally ORKS, founded by humans during the Dark Age of technology. Humanity prospered here, rich in mineral wealth, and with easy warp tides flowing for space travel, it was an excellent trade hub. Lights and noise attract attention. Resources make good mechs, and the Orks would become aware. Attacking with a voracious assault, the Orks would raze the planet before riding back into the warp tides. As with nearly all Ork assaults, the departure is not as clean as it appears to be. They'd leave behind fungal spores, and the Orks would return in time. Other species would periodically form outposts on the planet. Sometimes the Orks would rise up, other times not. Sometimes they'd be destroyed, sometimes not. It wouldn't be until the Great Crusade of mankind, though, that any humans would return here in numbers. The Dark Angel Space Marine Legion would lay claim to the world, and for 2,000 years humanity would build, mine, and establish a functioning order on the reinstated world of ORKS. That was until around the 32nd millennium, when a great Ork warg swept through the system. Humans were overwhelmed again and evacuated, fleeing into the warp. But its tides destabilized, and ORKS would be cut off and not easily reached by outside influence again for about 8,000 years.
Oh, damn.
The Ork tribes, however, remained, battling one another and fighting over the human ruins that remained.
For 8,000 years.
A state of genuine attrition was reached, with various warbands fighting over ever-diminishing resources, none of them able to unite under a single leader.
There were no humans to fight, so they just fought each other over and over again.
Then came Ghazghkull. One thing the Imperium had learned about the Orks, though, was that their wargs could be quashed if detected early enough.
Quashed.
The Imperium would begin to deploy observation posts so as to best detect and monitor Ork numbers and activity. And the Dark Angels monitored this, as well as they routinely monitored human populations for potential recruiting planets. After the warp tides had calmed, the Dark Angels were able to establish one such outpost on Ork, so as to monitor this well-occupied Ork planet. The Orks, however, desperate for any loot and resources, managed to discover this observation post, and it was quickly overrun. At this time, Ghazghkull was just a Goth's trooper in a warband, and during the frenzy to claim the base, he would be shot in the head by a bolter shell, a devastating injury that would shatter his skull and pulp a section of his brain. Staggering back to his feet with immense toughness, he drew the respect of Orks around him, especially Goths. Despite being a physical wreck, staggering and stumbling, his blood and brain spilling out into his own hands, they eventually found their way to a doc, who would perform what I guess Orks deemed to be an operation. As is often the way with Orks, this was less a repair and more an improvement, an augmentation,
surgery,
and probably a bit of an experiment. Ghazghkull found that his skull and brain were now strengthened with bionics, squig sinew and adamantium plating. These physical alterations were great, to be sure,
oh damn,
but nothing compared to the vision he would see awakening from this augmentation. He would see a vision from Gork and Mork themselves to lead Orks on the greatest, most destructive and carnage-reaping warg
too
that
hard
there
in the
had
head.
ever been. It was his sole core belief that he had been in direct contact with his gods,
yeah,
and
visions.
that he was the chosen leader and the executor of their commands.
Sure.
That, or his
Of
brain
course
got
everybody
popped by
believed
a
him.
bolt gun round through the skull.
Yeah.
Either way, his purpose was clear and his resolve strengthened. And as is often the way in Ork culture, the whys and wherefores are not really relevant. It's the actions that count, and Ghazghkull's actions would be notable. Ork warlords began to fall immediately under his crushing will. The Death Skull's warlord Dregmek, with Ghazghkull barely minutes out of his surgery, the Death Skull's warlord would attack, unleashing a bullet storm that left Ghazghkull untouched. By perhaps godly intervention, Dregmek could not believe his eyes as Ghazghkull would stride forward, beating him into a bloody pulp, headbutting and smashing him to pieces as his mobs looked on.
Oh my
Some getting
God.
carried away in the violence and even cheering Ghazghkull
Yeah,
on. Roaring from his victory, Ghazghkull declared himself the prophet of Gork and Mork, and that this was his mere beginning.
There's no arguing with that.
The word of Ghazghkull's brutality and power spread fast, and orcs flocked to join a band with a sense of purpose and direction, to be something more than the pitiful squabbling and clamouring for scraps that they'd become. The tales of a new boss touched by the gods with a vision for war was very appealing. His further battles with the evil suns and bad moons would be no less aggressive, but required more tactical sense, using burning fuels to shield his troops' approach or outwitting warlords through their sense of pride for their disposition. He was placed as an inevitable leader. His subjugation of other warlords continued until he stood poised to do something no other orc warlord had done in 8,000 years: unite the tribes on the planet of Ork. His domination of the planet was unquestioned, but Ghazghkull had set his sights far beyond bringing together the orcs inhabiting his world. His words drove the orcs to their purpose.
Now I understand more and more why the pairing for the kill team, orcs versus Deathcorp Krieg, they are similar in a lot of ways, right? Now I see it that why they're perfect opponents on a tabletop against each other. I started painting the Slasha Boy. I can't show him to you because the green screen is canceling his skin. Yeah, and there are so many cool ones in that kill team set. Like I can't wait to paint them all, and they're all bigger than, you know, human models, so which makes it easier. So yeah, there's a Commander Knob. Wait, Commander Knob, I think. Not Commander. Commando, the biggest one, and oh my god, such a cool model. I wanted to paint him first, but like I chickened out because he seems a little bit more complex than the rest of the orcs that I have in the set. So, you know, I'll get to him eventually. It's gonna be fun. I just started painting minis. This is literally my second mini. I painted one of the Deathcorp Krieg. This was my first ever mini that I painted. It's also on YouTube, the whole process and the result. And the second one is the Ork. The third one I want to try assembling and painting Sisters of Battle. Those look a little bit difficult to paint, but I'm gonna give it a try.
The Warg beginning to form. Their energy attracting others, void ships began to arrive. For the first time in centuries, mechs worked together, building machines they never could have imagined previously. But now with the energy and the power of the Warg, it all just worked. It was a miracle. The orc energies flowed as they riveted together giant battle fortresses and mechs. Everything that occurred was the will of Gork and Mork, and Ghazghkull would declare every passing day, every achievement, every new ship arriving proved their quest was divine. Some of the orcs, they were wondering how they were going to get so many of the orcs off the planet. They didn't have very many flyers and no large ships to transport and begin their Warg. Ghazghkull quickly silenced them. A solution would present itself. It was the will of Gork and Mork. Days later, the ever unpredictable tides of the Immaterium would shift again, and that rarest of occurrences would happen. A gigantic ancient space hulk would emerge from the warp. Ghazghkull ordered tractor cannons and harpoon rockets on the few spacecraft that they had to secure the hulk. They couldn't guess as to how long before the warp would swallow the ancient ship, even with them holding it in place, and they needed to work fast. The orcs rushed to assist in mech construction. They crafted as many transports and war machines as possible. Once they deemed enough was enough, they crammed as many orcs into every possible space and set off. This great exodus from their backwater planet filled the skies. Not without many mid-air collisions and engine failures as well, to be sure. Crashing into the space hulk's outer hull, some managed to make their way inside, some straight on ploughed into the vessel, and those with more sense sought out landing positions. The orcs soon discovered that they weren't alone on the space hulk, with wave after wave of demons spilling out of its corridors.
Shit.
Battling through the horrors, Ghazghkull and his band fought through to the center of the hulk, where they found merged and jumbled by the warp was the ship, the Dominion. This was the vessel the humans had attempted to flee from the planet on some several thousand years ago, and seemingly it had been swallowed by the warp, its human occupants devoured by the demons as they lay trapped in their vessel. The void rift that was spilling demons had to be closed, but Ghazghkull after ordering his orcs to fire everything they had, was furious to discover it had no effect. His own weapon, even his own power claw, eventually with a massive headbutt and a flash of green light, that did the job, closing the demonic portal.
Oh, damn.
It seems likely his latent psychic energy was what effected this in closing, but for all the orcs observing, it was only further imbued their belief that this warlord was a force like no other. Ghazghkull now named his conquered Space Hulk the Ork warship World Killer. The ship would drift on for an undetermined period of time, in which the orcs would explore, loot, and generally rip off whatever they could find on board, cannibalizing the ship and using its materials to craft ever more powerful mechs and weapons. They appropriated everything they could lay their hands on and built everything they could lend their hands to. The best scrap would often lead to infighting and rivalry, all a positive thing for the orcs to keep their tensions and blood up. It would not be a quiet period though. Travelling through the warp in such an unsecure vessel is dangerous, and many times they'd be assaulted by further demonic incursions. And these assaults only further heightened the orcs' warg until the entire Space Hulk was seething with orc energies. The Space Hulk jolted and huge tremors swept across the ship. The World Killer had shifted back into real space.
Ooh, they traveled
Imperial records date the emergence of
safely.
the Space Hulk in the year 941 M41. They were headed for the core planet of the star system, an Imperial world aptly named Armageddon. An industrial hive planet where thousands of years of extensive industry had left it a barren wasteland with a totally collapsed ecosystem. Humans only survived in the concentrated hive cities that stood kilometers tall, and also in the Imperial military facilities stationed there. Food needed to be imported off-world, and no life existed outside of the hives. It
Seems
contained
like a nice
multiple
place
vast manufactorums,
to live.
vital to munition supplies for the Astra Militarum. But with one of the most savage and relentless wargs ever seen headed straight for them, it seemed like nothing was going to be able to stop World Killer and its crew.
Oh my god.
The ship would head straight to the planet without
completely,
stopping. The plan? There wasn't a plan. They would crash straight into the planet. Ghazghkull was literally on a collision course with his destiny. Caught off guard, nearby Imperial fleets and the planet's defences did what they could to slow the assault, but this only chipped away at the massive Space Hulk that approached. Taking minimal effective damage, it ploughed straight into the planet's polluted atmosphere, crashing with obvious devastation onto its surface. Even though many thousands of orcs would be turned to ashes on impact, this was but a tiny percentage of their total force.
Friendly casualties.
Ghazghkull seized this opportunity. "It is the will of Gorka Mork that we survive," he would proclaim. The orcs, now twice as pumped up, having survived their world-ending crash into the planet, would be a force none would wish to reckon with.
True.
And Ghazghkull quickly divided his massive army into 5 hordes, with leaders that he'd subdued and recruited to his cause back on Ork. They now stepped forth, millions of orc, but one voice. The human defenders weren't prepared for this. They had many forces, war gear and munitions, but the sheer scale of the violence and ferocity they were met with was of nothing they'd dreamt of in their worst nightmares, which in the 41st millennium is certainly saying something. This was not an ordinary orc warg. This was Ghazghkull Thraka's warg. The orcs showed expectedly no mercy at any instance, and they defeated the humans on the wastelands with their speeders and battle wagons, ruined enemy supply lines and cut down anything that moved.
Just imagine these people who are just like living in that hive city and the whole wog is just dropping on their head one Sunday morning. What the hell?
Quickly turned their attention to structures that they had never seen before. These hive cities, taller than mountains, industry and engineering on an imperial scale. The mechs stood in awe. So much scrap, they would have murmured. At the first hive they encountered, despite the Imperium putting up a formidable defense at Hive Volcanus, heavily fortified, this would take all of Ghazghkull's cunning. He had his gargants, but he wanted to take this city with orcs on the ground, scorching, burning and reaping through the trenches. The orcs would smash, crush and break this city. Using his visionary choices of units, Ghazghkull crushed the human defences quickly, and on breaking the gates, unleashing a wave of infantry. His will was executed perfectly, a tall order for an orc warg. Desperate humans resorted to guerrilla warfare, but despite much heroism, the Orks swept through like a plague, slaughtering and enslaving its occupants. Its manufactorums were quickly converted to Ork workshops. Human slaves turned to stripping their own city for every scrap of resource that could be used to fashion more Ork mechs. Now, on the planet of Armageddon, one human stood out from the general perception of the Orks as a weak and puny race: Commissar Sebastian Yarrick. He drew unusual respect from the Orks, not least because he wore goth colours of the black and red, but also sporting an augmented power core and bionic eye. This was a human the Orks could get on board with. Even more so when they learned from enslaved humans that they often feared Yarrick as much as they feared their other enemies. Yarrick known for shooting disobeying soldiers out of hand. Orks, upon seeing him in battle though, were often disappointed to see he wasn't quite as big as they'd imagined. He was only a human
normal
size
size human.
Oh well, he was an uncompromising warrior nonetheless.
Damn, he's
Yarrick
so
was the man
badass.
credited with withstanding the Ork assault on Hive Hades for a significant period of time. This assault brought the Armageddon War to a new level of brutality. The Orks had already sacked 2 Hive cities, and Hades stood next in line. The Imperium, in desperation, would launch virus bombs, devices not used since the time of heresy, against the Orks. And even though hundreds of thousands of Orks would perish, it wasn't enough. Ghazghkull wanted Hades, and he would direct the assault himself. He tried everything he could think of, growing ever more frustrated all the time. But all his traditional assaults would fail time and time again. Eventually he summoned his weird boys to use their Warg-consumed minds to blast a psychic storm at the Hive. Consumed by madness, the human defenders fell apart, but still the humans couldn't be defeated. The Ork flyers were ripped apart by anti-aircraft fire, tunnel fighters cut their Orks trying to advance underground to pieces, and human suicide assault squads took down the immense Ork gargants. All this would be Commissar Yarrick's doing.
Nice.
By now had become
GG's,
fixated and obsessed with bringing down Hive Hades, his vision and judgment clouded by the frustration and needing to bring it down. While still battling this bitter assault, he would direct an Ork horde to assault another Hive city, Acheron, perhaps in the hope to divert resources away or gain a victory and rally his troops to greater energy. But then, the worst possible development for the Orks. Orbital bombs rained from the sky as roaring Space Marine Thunderhawks would sweep down into the planet.
Oh,
Blood
damn.
Angels,
The
Ultramarines,
reinforcements.
and Salamanders. The Emperor's chosen warriors were here to defend Armageddon. Ghazghkull was still so blinded by fury in his efforts to defeat Yarrick and Hades, he was unable to think with clarity enough to counter the arriving Space Marines. He would throw everything he had to take down his obsession, breaking in the blast doors of Hades in a final rampage. The Space Marines would be too late to save Hive Hades, its citizens massacred. With Ghazghkull's numbers now both severely depleted and loosely scattered across the planet, he consolidated his last reinforcements to a new hive, Tartarus. The planet stood at a crossroads, even with the arrival of the Space Marines. They would deploy even as the Orks began their assault with mechs, stompers, and even Gorkanauts. The battle though was not in the Orks' favour, but then Ghazghkull himself arrived. The Orks could taste things were turning for them, but then just as quickly as he arrived, he'd gone. Chatter spread quickly through the Orks that the war boss had fallen. They began to waver to break, and the Imperium crushed the remaining Orks, driving them from Armageddon. But the Orks thinking Ghazghkull had fallen in battle was not so. Ghazghkull was not slain, but he did disappear from the battlefield. Rumours spread that the hand of Gork had plucked him from the battlefield, and his detractors would say fled, usually to be met with a swift headbutt from a nearby Ork, putting them in their place. However, it did happen. Ghazghkull had escaped. After Armageddon, Ghazghkull did not rest. As with most Orks, defeat is not really a thing, it's just a stumble, a setback, the chance to have another go. This was the beginning for him in his larger journey, a plan of Gork and Mork. Yarrick recommended the Imperium hunt down this brutal war boss and eliminate him once and for all, but the Imperium assumed him dead or defeated and didn't want to spend the resources or time to locate an Ork they were sure that was the last they'd see of. This was a grave error of judgment, as is often the case with most things in the Imperium. To the Imperium's mind, his warg had failed, and therefore, even if he did
Mr.
survive,
Soldiers.
Orks would not look upon him for leadership with his energy deflated. After losing a battle, while Orks will happily try again, they'll often topple their leader, as is their natural order of things. But not so with Ghazghkull. While he may have had to defeat several challengers in brutal fashion after he regrouped with various Ork tribes to remind them just who he was, he would begin gaining new followers again. Curiously for an Ork, not just with his actions, but with his words. To him, the invasion of Armageddon had been a starting point, a testing of the...
He's still big. He's still the biggest one, so they probably pay attention to his size more than to his words. But yeah, sure, maybe his words made sense to the other orcs.
The enemy to find their strengths and their weaknesses. A large-scale intelligence gathering, Ork style, leaving millions dead and burning cities in its wake. And in this, they gained much useful information. Now Ghazghkull knew about Imperium strategies. He would regroup, rebuild, and restore his prophetic warg. He would reveal to his fellow Orks, in order to destroy your enemy, you must know him. To the Orks, this is about as profound as it gets, and their spirits would reignite. The second coming of Ghazghkull Thraka was only a matter of time.
The outro slaps as always, Luetin. We is gonna stomp the universe, yeah, universe flat and kill anything that fights back. We is gonna do this cause we're orcs. Ghazghkull. That was good. That was good, Luetin. What a banger. Is this the only Orks Lore video by Luetin? I want more. I feel like there has to be more. I always keep finding myself after watching one of these videos that, you know, that I can't get enough of them. I mean, like, maybe not for today, but for the next time. Even though we knew the, you know, the most basic things about orcs, this was a great video to watch. And as I said before, now it makes sense why the orcs are the opponents for the Deathgorf Krieg in the Kill Team tabletop game and vice versa, right? I just feel like I want to learn more. Like how do they not procreate? Like how does how does the process of them turning from fungus into orcs work? And like the squigs, the small goblin-like species, I forgot what those are called. Like the whole hierarchy of orcish society. I don't know, I'm just so curious. I want to know everything. Orcs are cool, orcs are amazing. I can't wait to paint my orc squad now. But like orc technology, orc machines, war machines are like the next level. I don't know if I will ever be able to paint those, but like maybe with time and experience. But they look really cool to paint as well. Maybe not as cool as knights though. Maybe I want to paint a knight more than I want to paint a piece of orcish machinery. But yeah, we'll see. Amazing video by Luetin. You guys, please, again, go subscribe to Luetin on YouTube. Check out my YouTube where I post all of these. Shit, that scared at me. Whew. It's getting late. Check out my YouTube where I'm posting all of the reactions to lore videos and also my miniature painting journey. and thank you for all the support that you've showed me so far. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to our members and Patreon supporters. Bye bye!